Well, hello everyone. My name is Zachary O'Shea, and this is Box of Teeth. We have the last in our current antagonist series for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, the one that was started in March and has run over into April, and we're just going to go over a couple of plots that you could use them in. We're going to talk about a few different horror-themed plots that you can use for La Contessa, the universal antagonist we've been talking about for the last month or so here in a moment, but as a quick reminder, La Contessa is a combination of Count Dracula and Van Helsing all put into one. She's an alchemist, she's a formal noblewoman, she's very much about the ends justify the means in the way that she deals with stuff, and she is a unique kind of undead that makes strange alchemical undead as well. The big thing to remember about all of these plots is La Contessa doesn't think that she's the bad guy. She is fighting the better fight, she is working for the greater good, and that means that whatever she does in the end, it's going to be justified and it's going to be worth it. Probably the easiest plot to use for her is kind of a cat's paws one, where she is the mentor or the patron of the player characters at the beginning, but slowly and surely they realize that she is not much better than what they're hunting. Sure, vampires are evil and they're destructive, but she's willing to scorch the earth to get rid of them. A big part of this is the bait and switch. She has to start as a mentor that your players are going to trust and that the player characters will want to work for and reap benefits from, but then slowly and surely sprinkle in little hints along the way, perhaps previous associates that are no longer alive but are now unlive because of her, little bits of history and fragment that they find, or rumors, or even a villain revealing a lot about her in a bid to save their own skins. Hey, yes, you might be hunting me down now for what I've done, but you don't know who you work for. You know, that sort of thing. You also have to remember that she's going to see heroes as easily disposable. There's always going to be more folks that are looking to join her fight because of how the undead are and how much they disrupt society and destroy lives. But they're also recyclable because she makes her own undead. Whether that's raising the bard, who's a college of blades, to be another ghoul killer for her, or taking the cleric and pickling their head and using it for an aspergum golem. There's a lot of different things that she can do to those that she has always supported to continue the fight. And these are really good things to kind of sprinkle in so those players eventually realize they're actually working for a bad guy. And this should all culminate in some sort of terrible in-game plot that she has. This could be perhaps a magical way to wipe out anyone who has the taint of undeath, but it would also affect people that were just hit by a ghoul and failed to save once, or anybody who happens to be related to a vampire but aren't actually vampires themselves. That there's going to be an innocent life cost, especially if it's people that the player characters know, are really going to give them that impetus to stop her. Another angle you can go is that she's already kind of succeeded in what she's doing. She's a tyrant, or maybe even you could use her as a dark lord in Ravenloft that has her own realm where there are still undead, but they're kept under heel. This is really Who Watches the Watchmen sort of idea, that she is this omnipresent force, almost like an extrajudicial vigilante. She and those that work for her that do protect everyone, but it is strict and kind of fascist, and the heel is on the throat of everyone. And she just doesn't see that because, again, the ends justify the means. There still has to be some sort of smaller evil that she's stopping, but the damage that's done by that, the collateral damage as it were, is always greater than the evil that she's actually stopping in the long run. But then your player characters and your players have to really think about, do the ends justify the means? If we remove her from power, is this going to let vampires propagate? Is this going to make sure that necromancers are going to cause more problems? And how do we stop that from also happening? It's one of those, you must play with unintended consequences, and are you going to accept an increase in one evil to dial down this other evil by quite a bit? The last angle that you could go is also some sort of monster lover plotline. There could be one of her relatives that were turned into vampires that is actually still alive and is running away from her and becomes a friend of the player characters. It could be that one of the player characters has an undead background themselves, like a Dampier or a Returned, and thus they are going to be targeted by her as well, just because of her nature. Or maybe they fall in love with an NPC along the way who just happens to be undead, and they want to protect them from La Contessa herself. This turns her into not quite an anti-heroine La Contessa, but she's definitely someone that's going to be shown and believe she's doing the right things, even though it's causing personal, direct emotional damage to the player characters. And that can be a pretty satisfying turn of, what are we willing to sacrifice to protect what we actually care about? Because La Contessa's out there doing some good things, but in a lot of terrible ways. And it's really more important to me that my personal relationship lasts. Those are just 3 really quick ideas of what you'd use La Contessa for in a campaign. I'd love to hear what ideas all of you would have down in the comments below, because there's a lot of brilliant people out there. If you're interested in La Contessa, any of her minions, or hundreds of other horror-themed monsters for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you can always go to boxofteeth.blogspot.com. If you'd like to look at the non-Dungeons & Dragons horror role-playing game projects that I have, or the horror fiction that I write that includes Grace Paint right here, it's got a killer clown. Book 2 should be out sometime this summer. You can always go to www.zacharyoshay.com. As always, thank you for your time and your attention.